Your Town Matters is funded by the Government of Canada through the Local Journalism Initiative and supported by Cactus Media, Canada's independent community television association.
I'm Andrew Sutton. Welcome to CHCO-TV's special election coverage for St. George. With 12 candidates running for 6 council seats, voters will have a lot to consider before casting their votes in the May 10th municipal election. In this special, we will be bringing you interviews with 7 of the 12 candidates. Not all candidates wish to participate in this broadcast. In keeping with election guidelines, each candidate will be given the same questions with up to 9 minutes of interview time. How the candidates choose to use their time is up to them, and they were sent the questions and the rules prior to the interview. Starting in alphabetical order, here's my interview with Brenda Allison, who is running for re-election. Brenda, thank you for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, some of your backstory, and why you're running for council, for re-election, I suppose.
Exactly. My name is Brenda Allison. I moved to St. George in 2009. I'm originally from St. John. I took business at St. John Vocational School. I was a stay-at-home mom for many, many, many years till my girls were able to be on their own. I took business. I also, when I went back to work, I worked at Director's Choice. It's an answering service for funeral homes. And then we decided to move down here. We had a camp at McDougall that we purchased in 2000. So we were driving by through St. George one day and we both looked at each other and said, we'd like to buy a home here. So we sold our condo in Milledgeville and moved to St. George on Clark Avenue. And it's been great. I joined council, I got elected, council in 2018 in the by-election, so I've been there 3 years. It's a rewarding. I've always wanted to be a part of something that I could help people, and I feel that council is that. It's not an I as council, it's a we as council, and I feel that over the years with my volunteers with St. George, I am the chairperson for CCRTA. Also the secretary. I was the secretary for Crime Stoppers when we had Crime Stoppers in St. George. I've also worked at Granite Town Farms in St. George, and I also work part-time as a funeral director's assistant with St. George Funeral Home. I'm currently the vice president of the St. George Curling Club. I've have been the treasurer, the secretary at the McDougall Lake Campers Association. My portfolio, when in this past terms, I was the head of tourism. And tourism is a great portfolio to have. It's rewarding, but then you have your challenges, especially with the pandemic. It really made you realize what people really do and how they go about coming to your town, seeing what you have and that. So I volunteered at the 2014 Women's World Curling, and I volunteered here in St. Andrews when the curling was here in St. Andrews. So, you know, it's been a rewarding experience, and I feel that I can maybe give another 4 years to finish off what I'm hoping that I started before.
Okay. Patrick, do you want to move her mic? Is she clipping it all? No? Okay. All right. Because she leans into it.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. Okay, good. I could hear it, so I thought maybe it was an issue. Sorry, we'll just take it from there then. It's not your fault.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll try to sit up straighter. How's that for you?
Well, it's just when you look down here.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
But if Patrick can't hear it, then it's
Okay.
not an issue. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, so that was about 3 minutes, I think. Okay. So, in your opinion, what are some of the key issues facing St. George today?
Some of the key issues is housing, and that's like all the municipalities in the area. Housing is a big issue with us. I feel infrastructure is also. We have a lot of roads that I feel need to be looked at, and sidewalks for people to be able to walk and enjoy the area and be able to walk and not being worried about being hit by a car or walking too close and hurting their ankles on the gravel and that. So there is, that is a big issue is housing. And I feel that if you have housing, then you can have the employment part to go with it. So one kind of helps each other out. So that is I feel that is what our main issues are right now.
Okay. So if you're reelected, how do you go about addressing some of those issues?
Really, I feel that maybe having more input from the residents really would help, because some residents have different opinions. Some residents have different ways of looking at things than the way you do. And I feel that helping our residents in our community, letting them voice their opinion a little bit more, and that brings the council together. A council is just not one person, it's a we person. And so I feel that if everybody has an opinion, everybody can voice their opinions, that would help our town grow more.
Okay. So if you were awarded a $1 million grant to spend in St. George, however you felt appropriate, how would you allocate those funds?
Wow. Really, that's a big question. That's when you should have town meetings, have opinions from different, the seniors might want something different, the young people for recreation. As everyone is aware, we are working on the canal beach out in the canal. We have a great splash pad that the committee and the town got together and got into St. George. And there's also the tourism. We really need to do a little bit more to draw more people in. As St. George, to me, is a little drive-by community. So the more you draw the people in, the more they see your beautiful town, how you represent the town and everything, it draws more tourism and more money to your area. So there is a lot of work that has to be done, and I feel that having open door meetings with residents, it will help bring different ideas and help see where we could put that money and where it could be more useful.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I'd like to wish all the candidates good luck in the May 10th election.
That was Brenda Allison. Election Day voting will take place at St. Mark's Anglican Church at 28 Main Street in St. George on Monday, May 10th between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. Next up is Leslie Armstrong. Leslie, thank you for being here. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your backstory and why you're running for council?
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I am a tobacco farmer's daughter. I'm the oldest of 5, and I'm from Prince Edward Island.
Oh.
I drove a John Deere tractor, and I planted the fields, harvested. I also helped my mom do some book work. I have 4 daughters, primarily raised them on my own. I spent 27 years with the provincial government as an income support worker, and I took an early retirement and was project manager and administrator of a 35 unit or 35 resident senior home. I met my husband 18 years ago and moved here to St. George. Now he seems to think that he rescued me, and that's still a little bit up for debate. I presently own a small business called Thermal X-ray Inspections, and I really believe that I have something to bring to the table.
Okay, excellent. So in your opinion, what are the most pressing issues facing St. George today?
I think the loss of the tourism is one of the big items. Growth and affordable housing. But I also feel, in my opinion, that they live in the same house. They all connect to one another. If we can revitalize the tourism, we'll be able to see some growth and then have some nice housing for people to live in. We'd like to see people moving into St. George and not moving out.
Okay. So if elected, how would you propose to address some of these issues that you've outlined?
My first thing would be to start looking at implementing some incentive programs to help builders, developers to build houses and to revitalize the tourism industry. But we're gonna need some help to get those things off the ground.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, if you were awarded a $1 million grant, how would you to use for St. George?
So let's be clear, the $1 million is a gift.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a grant.
It's a grant.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would do is I would take my $1 million and I would go to Fredericton and I would leverage that for another $1 million. And then I would take my $1 million, my grant $1 million, and I would go see John Williamson and I would leverage that for another $1 million. So now I have $3 million. And out of that $3 million, one of the first things I think I would do is I would do a small business or a St. George business beautification program where the businesses in St. George could access free gift of $5,000 apiece, perhaps to beautify their entrances, maybe some signage, maybe some lighting, whatever their business needs to help bring themselves some more exposure and welcoming new people into their establishments. So that's one, and then I would take $200,000 and I would invest it into the physical infrastructure, the existing infrastructure of our lost tourism, known as the Day Adventure property or the Day Adventure Center. Those buildings haven't been used for a while and they need a little help, but we still have the river, we still have the saltwater basin, and we still have the gorge, but we no longer have the tourism. And that was a gift to the community many years ago. And I really feel, in my opinion, that could be revitalized and brought back.
Okay.
Again, affordable housing. The growth, and the tourism, in my mind, they all kind of go together because you need to have the people in order to have something for them to do, but you need for them to live in a nice house that they can afford. I would take $100,000 and hire a recreational director and an assistant to implement, develop, and manage some programs for our youth and our seniors and for anybody who's interested in participating. A year ago or a year and a half ago, we started a community garden. I think it needs some leadership to get it off the ground and get it going really well. Then I would use another 150, maybe 200 for incentive programs to encourage developers to come to St. George to build those homes that we're needing. So now I have a little bit left over, and I have hopefully another $2 million that I can take a look at the Day Adventure property, the gorge, some other areas in the community, and other ideas. Because you know what? We need to be creative and we need to be bold.
That was our interview with Leslie Armstrong. If you wish to vote in the advance polls, you can do so between 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. on Saturday, May 1st, and Monday, May 3rd, at St. Mark's Anglican Church in St. George. Now here's our interview with Gilbrow. So Gil, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for council?
Yeah, so my name's Gilbrow. I am a lifelong resident of St. George, born and raised there 40 years ago. Live on the same street that I was raised by my parents, live next door to them, live next door to my grandparents. I probably am better known throughout the community these days because of the volunteer work and the charity work that I do around town. I've coached for 10, 12 years up at the high school, coaching volleyball for the boys and the girls up there, various teams. I do a lot of charity work. At the Masonic Lodge, we've done different programs at the schools through Books for Bikes, the breakfast programs, as well as the backpack program when it was in effect around town. So a lot of people have seen my face because we were doing bingo at one point, or Chase the Ace, which you guys were down for the couple of years that we were doing it. Couldn't do it this past year, obviously, but so I kind of get recognized around town for that. My background is in economics. I taught up at the University of New Brunswick in St. John for 10 years, as well as worked privately for Irving Oil as an economist. A lot of passion for forecasting and policy work, which is really kind of fits in with, politics and town council work, which led me to work to look into running for council at the by-election in 2018. So I ran at that and just narrowly lost a couple of votes. But afterwards, I was really encouraged by the people who reached out. They had talked to me and reached out again in the last couple of months to encourage me to try and run for town council again. So here I am. I feel like what I have presented and talked about on my Facebook page for the town council, the policies that are in effect and those positions that I feel strongly about resonate with residents through that encouragement. And so I'm trying again to run for council for a full term this time.
Okay, excellent. So in your opinion, what are some of the key issues that you've identified in St. George that you'd like to address?
There's a couple of issues and it's not just St. George. I think it's a couple of issues for everywhere in New Brunswick that need to be talked about during these municipal elections. First one would be on an issue of residents. The past year, this pandemic has really highlighted why it's attractive to live here, and you're seeing it now. Everybody's trying to move here. There's a skyrocketing housing market in New Brunswick. Not necessarily a very large amount of availability for rental units. People are trying to build, but it's not necessarily very available. What we need to do in this post-pandemic world with the current structure of being able to have work from home, what we can do from a municipality to encourage people to come to our town or even the province in general, right? It's a big concern for not just St. George, it's for St. Andrew, St. Stephen, anywhere, to actually sort of spur that growth in our community. That's a really big concern. How do you do that without alienating the people that are currently within your residence, right? I think that's probably the biggest thing to talk about that everybody knows that's at the forefront. The second thing, which has become more apparent in the last couple of months, is the province has made it known that there's going to be municipal reform. And I think it really is incumbent on us to not be reactive in this sense. They want to discuss it, and maybe there will be no changes, but if there are changes, we need to be proactive in a sense of not just taking whatever they give us. If we can get ahead of that and actually be a part of the discussion and have councillors that want to be engaged in that policy making, it will be better benefit for our towns. Those two things I think are really going to be very large issues over the next 4 years, and how they're addressed and how they're formed from those that get elected, it's really going to shape a lot of our communities.
Yeah. Okay, I think my third question was, how do you propose to address some of those issues? And I think you've kind of answered that. You can add to it if you like.
Yeah, I think there's some policies or areas of focus that you can look at, though. On the idea of residency, there's really three things that I think as a potential for being a part of council that need to be looked at. For residency, needs to be some examination on our facilities and our activities that are housed within our town limits. There is a need for a look and push for more housing and zoning availability. And it's not to say that it isn't happening, but we need a little bit more around that focus. And there needs to be just more general support for small businesses and services. So on the residency front, for facilities, I would have encouraged in 2018, one of the big things that I think we needed to look at is a lot more adult recreation availability. If you look around, we've done really good at putting the splash pad in. There's now a walking trail. There's Eagles Point, which is down by the bay, that's been redone, so it's a nice sitting area and a place to go and relax and view the bay. But there's not enough things to really want to move there and actually live there, right? You look at St. Stephen or St. Andrews, and there's complexes with facilities that are available not only to school children, but to all ages. I think it's very important that we continue to talk to the YMCA, which we have started some partnerships with, and further encourage them to look at building a field house down in St. George or in the surrounding area, now that they're done the one up in St. John, to be able to have courts and fields that are available to adults for senior play. I say senior, I feel old saying that, but it's more for senior play, right? Like, we try and get in at the high school, and it's hard, and it's understandable because there's a lot of teams that are trying to fill in that time slots at the gymnasium, which doesn't allow people my age or people younger than me to actually have sports after they graduate. I have to travel to St. John to play anything right now because of that unavailability, and it's really hard to make a convincing argument to move somewhere if there aren't those things that you want to do within that community. From the small services side, it's the same problem, right? Like, you don't want to live in a community where you have to drive to St. John or to St. Stephen or anywhere else that's 30, 45 minutes away to be able to see a family doctor or a dentist or a vet or any of those type of or daycare, any of those type of services. We have them in town, but we need to encourage more of it as we grow. And from a buildings perspective, I keep on hearing that there's not enough rental units in our area. There's lots in town that need to be rezoned, that there's dilapidated buildings on that can be removed to allow for new buildings to be put up. Those policies have to be put into place. From a municipal reform, I think it's just more talking at this point. We don't know what's going on. There hasn't been any details, so being able to be engaging with our other communities, talking to, the LSDs, the other municipalities in Charlotte County, trying to create a collective front is our best bet right now in trying to do that. And I think that's some of the things that I would try to do immediately.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for being here, Gil. That was Gilbrow. For information on how to vote by mail, visit the Vote by Mail section on electionsNB.ca. Next up is Nancylton. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Why don't you start off with just telling us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for council?
Well, I'm Nancylton. I have been a lifelong resident of Charlotte County, born and raised, except for a few years I lived out west and worked in industry out there, British Columbia Institute of Technology. Moved back and I started my administrative career, working at what was once known as NBTEL in the either human resources and public relations or personnel, whichever you want to call it. From there, I went to Connors Brothers Limited in Blacks Harbor as admin assistant to one of the VPs. And from there, I acquired a job at the federal government for 33 years as an administrative officer. And that was in Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. So from those experiences, I feel that I have gained life working experiences dealing with the general public, contentious issues, government affairs, you name it, I've probably experienced it. And then since my retirement, I've worked for all levels of municipal, provincial, and federal government in various positions throughout the elections. I've volunteered, I've organized events, special events, helped any way I could in the community, and Now I'm a stay-at-home old girl. And my home is in St. George, and I figured to keep me active and young at heart, I won't say young in age, that I decided I'd run for town council because St. George is a really beautiful town to be in, has a lot to offer the people. You just need people that are willing to work for it and to volunteer and people to listen to ideas. I think I'm pretty fair-minded and open-minded, and I'll listen to anybody, and I have to hear both sides of stories before I make my mind up. One of those type of people. And then my door is, well, because of COVID, my door won't be always open, but my telephone will be always on. And if anybody wants to call me, feel free. I don't care what time, day or night. I'm there to answer your questions. I won't make promises I can't keep. And if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know the answer, but I will try my hardest to find the answer and get back to you.
Okay.
So that's me in a nutshell.
What a nutshell.
You better believe it.
All right. So in your opinion, what are some of the most pressing issues facing St. George today?
Right now, St. George has got to move forward and not just be a bedroom community. Infrastructure is one of the things, and building on what is already in St. George. I mean, we've got seniors care that needs to be looked at. We have the mental health issues. We have doctors, dentists. Everything needs to be in a small community. And as a town council member, you've got to look for ways to bring those into the community to help people out. Affordable housing, encourage young entrepreneurs, businesses, anything that can help the area to prosper, keep the tax base low, and bring in revenue. So some of the issues I think that as a council member you should look at is ways of increasing those things in the town. So.
Okay. So how would you, so if you're elected, how would you propose to address some of those issues that you've outlined?
Well, number one, I think that we should look at the areas that are already there, like the Day Adventure Center. That is a fantastic area that can be built upon to bring in tourism. Tourists mean money and revenue to the town. But you can't let it sit there and go to waste. It's got to be improved. There's, say, Canal Beach is a project that the town started. It should be still built upon there. We've got one of the natural canals in the world just on our doorstep. One of the few natural canals in the world. Mm-hmm. Highest tides in the Bay of Fundy. We have the Macadavic River that is great for boaters, and we have the Eagle's Nest, which the town has started to improve upon. There's a multitude of things that could be done in the area. We've got to work with local businesses. We've got to work with the industries. We've got to work with the other communities, our surrounding communities in the areas of fire protection, community help, like one fire department helps another fire department, so that you can share your resources. Industry, we've got two of the largest industries for seafood, and in St. George itself, we've got some of the best seafood around. Sorry, other guys, other communities, but and I mean, there is so much that we can do to increase for tourism, helping young people, seniors, young families. We've got to have affordable housing and policing and the infrastructure itself. The streets have to be maintained. Everything has to be looked at. And I advocate having, well, I guess I could call them town hall meetings, that you listen to the people, the residents of St. George, and say, what is it do you need? What is it do you want? And when I say have the meetings, really listen to them. And those meetings are in addition to the regular council meetings. But you've got to be willing to approach people, approach the organizations, the local clubs, and say, what can we do to help you bring other people in? Spend the money in our town instead of going somewhere else. And with staycations and stay at home, we really have to build on that. We've got to be COVID minded and everything. So, and I sound like I could set the world on fire, but really I just want to help people.
Excellent. Okay, so if you were awarded a grant of $1 million to spend for St. George however you wanted, how would you allocate those funds?
Well, you and I both know, Andrew, that $1 million isn't going to go very far these days.
That's the challenge of the question.
Yes, especially with the price of wood, I'm told. First of all, I think that we should look at what we already have in the town that we can build on so that we aren't, as they say, spinning our wheels needlessly. There's projects there that need to be completed. There's probably grants that would be available in addition to the $1 million. But my biggest thing is fix what is already there, improve what is already there, and listen to the people in the town of St. George, what they need, what they feel they want, and listen to your industry people, listen to your businesses in the town. And together, and I mean together, working everyone together, town, council, mayors, young, old, and any point in between, we could make St. George a place that people would say, hey, I'm going to go to St. George this weekend. So that's basically me. I'm open to any and all suggestions. And as for the $1 million, wish we could be so lucky as to get a $1 million grant. I'm sure we could spend it.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right.
And I just want to say to everybody, vote for me. I'll try my hardest. The old girl is on duty all the time.
That was Nancylton. If you're a first-time voter who needs to be added to the voter list, identification will be required at the polls. Our next candidate is Alexa Detarakis. Alexa, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Andrew.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, some of your backstory, and why you're running for council?
Sure, so I'll break it into two parts. I'll give you an introduction of who I am, and then afterwards I'll tell you why I'm running. So I was born and raised in St. George. I've spent most of my life working on my parents' farm. When I was in high school, I took up an interest and a passion for community service, and I would eventually, in grade 11 and 12, volunteer at our local nursing home in Blacks Harbor. I would also coach an under-12 girls soccer team for 2 consecutive summers. After high school, I would go on to study psychology at the University of New Brunswick in Fredericton, and there I was elected vice president of my university's Women's Center. Also, while I was there, I took on several different volunteering positions, all which work with some of the most vulnerable members of our society. After I graduated from university, I went on and I moved to France, where I taught as an English teacher for 3 years. And then afterwards, I moved my way back to Canada, where I helped manage a small restaurant in Toronto. Fast forward to 2019, I made the decision to move back to St. George and help take over my family's business.
Okay.
So that's a bit of who I am. Why am I running? I have an extensive a long history of community involvement. I offer a fresh perspective, and most importantly, St. George will always be my home. I'm confident that I have the skills to take St. George to the next step and bring the change that this town needs.
All right,
Yeah.
Excellent. So, in your opinion, what are some of the issues in St. George that you find concerning?
Yeah, so in my opinion, I believe that St. George is at a standstill. We need to be revitalized. We need to try something different. We don't have a plan in place to promote a balanced population growth. We have yet, as far as I know, have a way to attract young professionals or retirees who want to come here and invest. We also don't have a plan in place for affordable housing to current residents. So those are the current problems that I believe exist in our town.
So if you're elected, how would you propose to address some of those problems? Okay,
so there are 3 things that I would propose, Andrew. The first thing I would do is I start with council. It's so important that council members respect one another and not foster a toxic work environment. We are the representatives of the town, and we should be held accountable for that. we can't be advocates for mental health if we're going to bully the person next to us. So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do would be to promote volunteerism. There are many students in high school that want to go on to post-secondary education, and there's also other students that want to go off to a specific work field. So with that in mind, the town should provide an incentive, so that is like through bursaries or through reference letters, to encourage students to volunteer in our community. Okay, so examples of that can include, getting involved in the beautification of the town, volunteering with seniors, tutoring. The list goes on and on. So there's lots of ways that students can help in our town. The third thing I would say is to promote St. George to big cities. Right now, the government in New Brunswick has launched a campaign called Live for the Moment New Brunswick. And they've done this in collaboration with other organizations, where the incentive is to attract people outside of our province in. And I think that St. George should be a part of this initiative. So those are the three things that I would do.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. So if you were awarded a $1 million grant to allocate in St. George however you wanted, how would you allocate it?
So 90% would be used to invest in new municipal infrastructures, so water, roads, and sewage. Then this would be for new housing projects. So that could be affordable apartments. It could also be for subdivisions. The 10% would be allocated for marketing. St. George is a wonderful town. If we had the right marketing plan, the best marketing strategy, we could attract some of the best professionals, investors, families, etc., to come and live in our town. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
My interview with Alexa Dedorakis. Sterling Harris, who is reoffering for council, was unfortunately not able to make it due to his work schedule, but he sent his best wishes to all of the candidates running and expressed pleasure in there being so much interest in council. Our final interview is with Cynthia McPherson. Thank you for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for council?
Okay. I'm originally from Grand Ann, and I worked for Canada Post for 20 years. 8 years on the island and 12 off. And when I was on the island, I was on council at that time. It was a while ago, and my main focus then was for the youth and helping to get recreation facilities for them. I also served on the transportation committee in Grand Ann. So when I moved off the island, I switched. Like I was postmaster on Grand Ann, but then I went into the main plant in St. John for Canada Post. And I worked nights, so I didn't have a lot of time to volunteer at that time, but I did volunteer for school lunch programs at that time. And then I moved to St. Stephen, and I volunteered for the hospital auxiliary down there. And I volunteered for many, many projects in St. George. I have a motto that I believe I appreciate everything. I believe in appreciating everything you have, maintain it well, and if you have a chance to improve it, do so. And that's why I'm running.
Okay, great. In your opinion, what are the most pressing issues facing St. George today?
Well, there's a few. I think one of the issues is the lack of affordable housing and the lack of an all-day child care and the lack of the marketing of the town itself. There's a lot of businesses in town that should be promoted and actually businesses just outside of the town limits also, that cater to St. George, St. George. And there's a lot of potential for tourism, which I think would boost the economy of the town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. If elected, so what are some of the key steps that you would take to address some of these issues?
Okay, if I was elected, I have a lot of ideas and I would present them to council. I'll just say two of them. First off, I would like to develop the Day Adventure Center for both for residents and tourists. And then I'm interested in saving the environment, so I would initiate a program to plant wildflowers in the town to save the bees. That's just two of my ideas. But of course, if I'm elected, I'm only one of 7. So there would be lots of other councillors I know that have a lot of good ideas, plus the residents. So I would encourage the council to form committees with residents and discuss and plan ways and means of moving the town forward.
Okay, great. Now, if you received a $1 million grant to spend in St. George however you wanted, how would you spend it?
Well, that's a dream. So I guess I could dream big. I was always taught if you had money in debt, you should pay down your debt. So I would want to look into the debt load of the town and study some of the loans, the terms and all that, and see if it was feasible to pay some of them off. And then the town could start new. I also, one of my other priorities would be to build a new fire hall. And we have a lovely library now, but it's in the 2nd floor of the town hall. It's got a couple set of stairs. So I would encourage the building of a new library that was accessible for everybody. And I also am interested in a museum because I really think these two things are, especially the library and museum, are very, very important for a community and for its residents, and the museum for bringing in tourists.
Okay, great. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
That was Cynthia McPherson, and that concludes CHCO-TV's Vote 21 special municipal election coverage of the St. George Town Council candidates. Be sure to do your part and vote on May 10th. I'm Andrew Sutton, and this has been Meet the Candidates for St. George on CHCO-TV.